Welcome to TFP, the Theater Folk Podcast. I am Lindsay Price, resident playwright for Theater Folk. Hey, I hope you're well. Thanks for listening. And before I forget, do not miss out on the Theater Folk news this week. It's a good one. Okay, we are chugging through September, and that means the weather's turning colder, and that means it's perfect conditions for a YouTube Fireside chat. We've got the fake cocoa on the stove. We're stoking the fake fire. So, hi Craig, how are you?
You know what, it's just awesome to do these in the wintertime because it was getting really hot and smoky in here during the summer when we were doing these.
And very sweaty. Mm-hmm. Very sweaty, but now we're good.
It was like Bikram yoga in here.
My favorite yoga ever. Okay, so Craig, did we not earlier this month go see the latest foray, or not four-way as in a highway, but foray into bringing Shakespeare into the 21st century by seeing Joss Whedon's version of Much Ado About Nothing?
Yes.
That was such a long way to go, wasn't it?
Well, you asked a yes or no question.
I did.
You should have asked me an open-ended question. What was the best Joss Whedon movie I've seen in the past 3 weeks?
What was the best Joss Whedon movie you've seen in the past 3 weeks?
I think it was Much Ado About Nothing.
Excellent. All right. So, now I found it really enjoyable. It was another closed-ended question. Did you find it enjoyable?
That wasn't even a question. You said, I found it really enjoyable. That was not even a question.
But then I realized I was going to turn and ask you the question, and it was closed.
Yes, I very much enjoyed myself.
Here's an open-ended question.
All right.
What stands out in your memory about that movie?
Well, I would say that it was set in... I don't know if it was set in modern times. Was it set in modern-ish times? And I thought the translation worked very nicely there. I thought the setting worked very nicely, and it didn't feel like an old... See, a lot of times when they set something in a modern time, if it's like Shakespearean, especially if there's like a love story, it has like a feeling of not quite fitting because... You know, we're much different with romantic relationships than maybe we were in Shakespeare's days, you know, but it felt like a contemporary story to me when I saw it. And I also enjoyed how how much they were able to make the language, and it was all original Shakespearean language, how much they were able to make it sound like natural modern speaking. I think that went a long way towards making it feel modern, because despite the iambic pentameter and you know, Shakespeare's arcane words, it still felt current and sensible to me.
My impression of it had to do a lot with the visual. There were so many visuals, and movies are a visual medium, and I really felt that the visual interpretation of the Shakespeare's words are really engaging. And I also thought that the guy who played Dogberry, whose name is Nathan Fillion, was really great. But interpretation's really the word that we're going to hit on today. And just as particularly with Shakespeare, there are just so many interpretations out there, mostly because, you know, the guy's, he's been in the public domain for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it seems that it's something that people like to do, that they like to take it and see where they can run with it and how they can do it.
Well, I think it goes back to something you said a while ago. You said that Shakespeare wasn't writing, you know, stories. He was writing about humanity. So no matter what time period we set it in, we'll always find humanity in it, because it's always there. He's writing about people, and he's writing about the parts of people that just don't change.
Well, it's humanity and its universality. I told a playwriting class last week that Romeo and Juliet is not about arcane language and an arcane system. It's about a boy and a girl who fell in love when they weren't supposed to, which happens, you know, today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And that will never change. And that's why Shakespeare will never go out of style.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what. So interpretation, that's what we're all about today. And how do different mediums and different directors approach the same material, which I just think Shakespeare's just such a fabulous place to do this because there's so many interpretations. So the first thing we're going to start with is that we're going to go with the 2 trailers for the 2 most well-known versions. And I can't think of another movie version. So, forgive me if I'm wrong, but we have the 2012 Joss Whedon version, and then we have the 1993 Kenneth Branagh version. And trailers are really interesting in that they're supposed to give a window into the world of the movie. Sometimes they give away too much. Sometimes it's completely different than the final product. But what I like about these 2 trailers is that they show a very different take on the same material.
Forget everything you've ever known about adventure, romance, betrayal, and comedy, and discover it all over again.
I will bring Signor Benedict and the Lady Beatrice into a mountain of affection.
By this day, she's a fair lady. I want you to get by this hand, I love thee.
So that's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Same material,
the exact same
story,
script,
exact same script, but they're very polar approaches in the selling of the movie.
Yes.
And it's really funny because when I look at the Kenneth Branagh one, epic music, epic selling, it's Academy Award winner this, an Academy Award winner that, and epic music, the very operatic music, which was really at odds with every clip that they used, because all of their clips were sort of on the comedy of it and the very small, intimate nature of romance.
They weren't all, a lot of them made it look like there was going to be a lot of nudity in the movie.
Did they?
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
Oh my goodness, there's got to be half a dozen shots of a woman we're talking about the Kenneth Branagh one?
Branagh one.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is really funny because the Joss Whedon one sort of goes out of its way there's a visual and a oral sexiness to the music. I find that the music is very like that. It's a jazzy, loungy is a better word. Black and white, little spots of color. And I feel that trailer does a much better job, although they basically tell the whole story. I don't know if that matters with Shakespeare, but, it much more true to the tone of what the movie's going to be about.
I felt that is it Joss or Josh?
It's Joss. So I'm going Joss.
Okay.
If we're wrong, oh boy, we're wrong.
That one, the Joss Whedon one, seemed to be more about the actual material.
Right.
It seemed to be more about the relationships and, this story, where the one for the Kenneth Branagh one looked like a big Hollywood movie. They went out of their way to make it look like it was a cast of thousands. Yeah. Like every shot that was in the movie,
epic, that
had a lot of people in it had an excerpt in that trailer. I think they made it look like a big, huge thing.
Which I think is an excellent sort of segue into the next 2 that we're going to look at. We're going to look at now a little scene from the 1993 Kenneth Branagh and the same scene from the 2012. And what you just said about epicness and throwing as many people in as possible is really going to come into play.
Yeah, because I think this is interesting because I'm an old man because I did see the Kenneth Branagh movie, but I saw it at the movie theater.
Yes.
Like,
I can't.
when it came out. What, 1993?
20 years ago.
Oh my
Isn't
goodness.
that sad?
I'm very old.
Okay, so when, for all of you listening, when you go and, because we'll make sure that these clips are in the notes, when you watch them, think about interpretation. Which one do you like the best? Which one hits the material the best? What would your interpretation of the scene be? How do they differ? How do they similar? How do they similar? Oh my heavens. How are they similar? Okay.
I wonder that you will still be talking, Signor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
What, my dear Lady Disdain? Are you yet living?
Is it possible Disdain should die while she hath such meat food to feed it as Signor Benedict? Courtesy itself must convert to disdain if you come in her presence.
Then is courtesy a turncoat. But it is certain I am loved of all ladies, only you excepted.
I wonder that you would still be talking, Signor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
What, my dear Lady Disdain, are you yet living?
Is it possible Disdain should die while she hath such meat food to feed it as Signor Benedict? Courtesy itself must convert to disdain if you come in her presence.
Then is courtesy a turncoat. But it is certain I am loved of all ladies, only you excepted.
Okay.
So just the difference between the largesse of the banter in the Kenneth Branagh one, and that everybody is listening and paying attention, and it sort of seems to be egging the two of them on. And then in the 2012 one, where it's just them.
Just them. Yeah. Yeah. The other one seems to be like a show, and this one is a more intimate conversation
That nobody else hears. Which one do you like better?
Well, I'm always going to say, well, listen, I think, they're both valid. But I would say that the Kenneth Branagh one looks a lot more like a play that's been filmed. There's this cross that Emma Thompson does at the beginning of that speech that's like a clear kind of theatrical cross. It's kind of almost strange the way it works. And clearly the Joss Whedon one is shot for film. Yeah. I mean, I think Branagh is like speaking to the back row of the balcony.
Yeah.
Now, it's a different context because there's other people around and they're kind of showing off for everyone.
Showing off.
But I think probably because it's freshest in my mind, but I think I prefer the second one because film is a completely different medium than theater. And this is film. And so I feel like that performance is much more suited to film.
Right. I find it's just fascinating. The difference between the same text when you put it in a I'm going to show off scenario and just two people who have history and don't like each other.
I think they're both valid interpretations, though. That's what's amazing about the material.
Yeah. So, and on that note, talking about how something that's being filmed for a film medium and something that maybe is done as in a theatrical medium and plunked into film, I thought it would be interesting to just look at some actual stage versions. Ooh. So we've got 3 very brief openings of the play, and what's very interesting is that which ones strive for Shakespeare's intention. I think there's one that's really trying way too hard. Craig, you can see which one you think that is. And the big question for these is how do they set the scene for what's to come?
I learn in this letter that Don Pedro of Aragon comes this night to Messina.
He's very near by this. He was not 3 leagues off when I left him.
How many gentlemen have you lost in this action?
But few of any sort, and none of name.
A victory is twice itself when the achiever brings home full numbers. I find here that Don Pedro hath bestowed much honor on a young Florentine called Claudio.
Much deserved on his part, and equally remembered by Don Pedro. He hath borne himself beyond the promise of his age, doing in the figure of a lamb the feats of a lion.
I pray you, is Signor Mountanto returned from the wars, or no?
I know none of that name, lady. There was none such in the army of any sort.
What is he that you speak of, niece?
My cousin means Signor Benedict of Padua.
I learn in this letter that Don Pedro of Aragon comes this night to Messina.
He's very near by this. He was not 3 leagues off when I left him.
How many gentlemen have you lost in this action?
But few of any sort, and none of name.
A victory is twice itself when the achiever brings home full numbers.
I find here that Don Pedro hath bestowed much honor on a young Florentine called Claudio.
Much deserved on his part, and equally remembered by Don Pedro. He hath borne himself beyond the promise of his age, doing in the figure of a lamb the feats of a lion.
Oh, good Signor Leonato, you are come to meet your trouble. The fashion of the world is to avoid cost, and you encounter it.
Never came trouble to my house in the likeness of your grace.
You embrace your charge too willingly. I think this is your daughter.
Her mother hath many times told me so.
Were you in doubt, sir, that you asked her?
Signor Benedict, no, for then were you a child.
You have it full, Benedict. Truly the lady fathers herself. Oh, be happy, lady, for you are like an honourable father.
If Signor Leonato be her father, she would not have his head on her shoulders for all Messina, as like him as she is.
I wonder that you will still be talking, Signor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
What? My dear Lady Disdain. Are you yet living?
So there we have 3 different openings, but for the stage. And what was it like to watch them after we've just been sort of entrenched in this story and movie world, and then to be kind of dropped quite forcefully into the stage?
Well, the first one was like a BBC one. I think so. That was shot a little more for film, was maybe staged as a stage production, but it was shot for film, I think.
Really stuffy and very...
Yeah, it was like a library production. It was like everything you would...
hate about Shakespeare.
Everything, yeah. If you really wanted someone to find Shakespeare dry and boring, that's the one you would show them.
But then what did you think of the David Tennant one? So there was one with David Tennant and as Benedict, and Catherine Tate was her name as... Beatrice, which was set in very modern times. Everyone's drinking beers.
I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe this was done in rep with Anything Goes. So they only had one costume budget.
Well, I had seen this clip before, and the first thing I noticed is Beatrice needs a bra, man. That was a lot of... It was distracting. It was it's really interesting because here is a stage version that went for a very specific visual look and a very specific interpretation. Mm-hmm. And to me, seemed like it was interpretation over text. I just felt it was so much of a sound. It was so much of a sound and so much of a look, as opposed to human beings who don't get along sparring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like this is like an English production, right? Yeah. I feel like it was a production one would stage if you knew that your audience had seen 10 different versions of the play before. So to someone who had seen it again and again and again and knew the story, knew speeches backwards and forwards, it would come across as a fresh look at it, maybe.
Why is that good?
I'm not saying it was good. I think you should always
go. And to
go.
be fair, we saw a minute and a half clip. But
yeah, and the other thing I want to say too, with this one and the middle one, the one from the Globe Theatre, is that those are taped productions of a live stage show, and you cannot
judge them.
You can't. They're really hard to judge because, especially the Globe one. The Globe one is absolutely ludicrously over the top bad, but it's done in an outdoor theater where people are sitting very far from the stage, and I imagine that it plays much, much differently when you're sitting in the audience. I don't believe they use any kind of amplification. The roof might be open, so the acoustics are probably not that wonderful in there. So I feel like I find it really hard to watch a filmed production of a stage play and really enjoy it because it wasn't shot, unless sometimes they're shot, like sometimes they're a stage play and then they'll bring in some cameras and shoot like more intimate things on the stage and then kind of edit it into the context of a live performance. I'm thinking of like the Sweeney Todd tape, for example. Like I believe that was edited together.
Right.
The two that we saw were not. They were just kind of cameras shooting the scenes live.
Having said all that, it's still different interpretations, right? Different tones. Like the way, whether or not that David Tennant one should not be seen on YouTube. And let's show this as a great case for why you shouldn't record theater and why it's not a good idea. But interpretation wise, it's such an interesting, there were some interesting choices that I still think are heavy. I would have found them heavy, I think, in the theater. And going all the way to the other one where it really was a library version of Shakespeare with everything very contained. To the interesting, I found that the middle one at the Globe was very much in tune to the Kenneth Branagh tone in terms of the costumes that they wore and just sort of idyllic is not the right word, but the Forest of Arden kind of look. Any last words?
Yes. What I really enjoyed about rediscovering this play, and I hadn't seen it for some time when we last saw the movie, was it's basically the prototype rom-com. Every movie you see nowadays that's a rom-com, like will Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant get together? It's all based on this play.
Yeah.
That's probably based on many
Some
other
Greek
other things.
comedy.
But I mean, this is like the prototype of those stories. The couple who shouldn't get together and do, and then there's things that come in their way, and then they get together at the end. Spoiler alert there. The other thing I would say is what I loved about watching this play again was really kind of realizing that what I find wonderful about Shakespeare sometimes is that sometimes the bad guy is just the bad guy. He doesn't need,
no reason.
Yeah, there's no big long speech about avenging someone's death or anything like that. He just is bad, and he's a bad guy and does bad things, and that's what it is. And I actually really kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, you found that refreshing.
I do find it refreshing. I remember it was taught to me when I was in university as thinking you can't look at Shakespeare in like kind of a Freudian sense. Like you can't look for, they don't really have motivations. If someone's a lover, they're in love. If a character says "I love you" to another character,
they do.
They love them.
You can't.
There isn't subtext in Shakespeare unless it's clearly subtext.
You can't read into it. You can't put a modern sensibility into what they do because, as you just said, there's no subtext. There is no subtext.
Now, if I'm playing Claudio nowadays, I have to come up. I think as a modern actor, you have to create some kind of, character background and why it is that I'm doing the things that I'm doing. But the script is not going to help you.
No, which is maybe why, look at this, watch this, coming around full circle.
All right.
I'm turning the wheel into the final turn. Maybe that's why we need interpretations. Maybe that is what we're bringing into it in our modern sensibility, that it's not there, that's where our actor work lies, our director work lies. It's all in what we take this canvas and what do we put on it.
And that's why I think Shakespeare's so great, because his canvas is so blank.
In the most wonderful of ways, and it is the kind of canvas of humanity and universality, because what these characters do worked in Shakespeare's time, and then 100 years later, it works now. It's still going to, unless something happens and we all become robots, which is not out of the question, but it's going to fit 100 years from now.
As long as we can still understand some of those words, it'll still fit.
Yeah. Oh. So there you have it. Now, podcast listeners. So a great exercise to end this podcast would be to write or have your students write in journals on what it means to interpret a work, especially something as iconic as Shakespeare. Is there one way to interpret Shakespeare? Is it wrong to play Shakespeare out of his intended time period? Why or why not? And if you look at these videos, which interpretation do you like the best and why? So before we go, let's do some theater folk news. Now, earlier in September, we had the pleasure of reaching 10,000 Facebook fans. Craig, can you believe it?
I can't believe it. It's amazing.
I think it's wonderful. And this would be on our Facebook page, funnily enough.
Facebook.com/theaterfolk, and that's R-E, the way Shakespeare spelled theater.
Whoop, whoop. Okay. And since this is a rather large number, we wanted to do something large and special. And Craig, we talked about what that special thing might be.
We were going to buy the winner a pony, but that was going to be impractical. So what we chose to do was give away a production of one of our plays. So what you get with that is you get the printable PDF download, you get the photocopy license that lets you make as many copies as you need for your cast and crew. Am I doing your work for you?
Craig,
you also get the performance royalties for your first performance.
Are we crazy? No.
No, but we must be mad.
We must be mad.
No, we're mad with excitement because I am so thrilled that there's that many people on Facebook who want to hear what we have to say.
There are that many people on Facebook who want to know about the dumb stuff that we do.
No,
not dumb. Wonderful, exciting theater folk products and or services. Okay, so all you have to do, and the most exciting thing is that you don't even have to be a Facebook fan.
We won't check.
We're not going to check. How would we check, really? To participate in this wonderful production giveaway, all you have to do is go to our website, which is www.theaterfolk.com/blog, right? And we'll also put it in the notes for this podcast. Mm-hmm. What else do I have to say? I know. Lastly, where can you find this podcast? We post new episodes every Wednesday at theaterfolk.com and on our Facebook page. There's that Facebook page again. And Twitter. You can find us on youtube.com/theaterfolk. You can find us on the Stitcher app, and you can subscribe to TFP on iTunes. All you have to do is search the word Theater Folk. Yay, Theater Folk! I like Theater Folk. How about you?
They're okay.
Yeah, they're good people. They're good folk. They're theater folk.
But they don't do a lot of folk theater.
No. Oh, that's where we're going to end. Ooh. Take care, my friends. Take care.